I'm going to try to do my best to wrap up, keep things a little higher energy, keep up the energy from Matt over there. That was amazing. And talk a little about sales productivity. So let me preface this a little bit. I'm a marketing guy. My perspective is from the marketing side. I say that A, because it's true, and B, because I don't want to piss off Trish Bertuzzi and make sure she doesn't attack me after this. I have a high degree of respect for Trish and the work that she and her team does, and high respect always comes with a little bit of fear as well. So love you, Trish. My perspective is on the marketing side. We do demand generation, lead management, and what I would call sales enablement. How many of you have a sales enablement function in your organizations? How many of you have any idea what I'm talking about when it comes to sales enablement? Not a lot of companies do, quite frankly. Yeah, no, it's good it's fine to admit it. When I think about sales enablement, I think about providing the sales team with the tools, the content, the support they need to close more deals, to be more productive and to increase their conversion rates. Traditionally, I guess that has been a function of sales operations, which traditionally has been administrative and reactive. Good sales operations today, I believe, is strategic and proactive. I believe it's the most important role, potentially, in the sales organization, given the impact it can have on the entire organization. But I also believe fundamentally that sales enablement is a marketing function. I believe marketing's job does not end when the lead is generated. Part of marketing's job is to increase the success and the efficiency and the productivity of the sales organization. It's not just by creating leads and throwing them over the wall. It's not just by creating sales sheets and throwing them over the wall. So we're going to talk through a few places where I think sales enablement can be more successful for sales teams, where sales enablement can increase the productivity of sales teams. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some attributes of salespeople that I think is going to also make salespeople more effective. How many of you know what the active selling time percentage is for your sales team today? How many of you have ever measured that? What percent of your sales team's time is spent actively selling versus not actively selling? Anybody? 60%? What do you think the average is? There's a company called Velocify that does call software. They did a study that asked this question. They actually went and looked at how people were spending their time across industries, across companies. The average active selling time among sales reps is 25%. 25. That's more than just a quick Facebook coffee break, right? Now, I have never seen, nor would I ever expect, a salesperson to be anywhere near 75 to 80% plus, right? There's always non-selling time. There's always time learning. There's time in meetings. There's time preparing. I'm a big proponent of practice, right? That is a great use of non-selling time. I don't know why we give our sales reps scripts. I don't know why we give them new sales processes and then give them a 10-minute sales meeting and then out you go start making calls. But what would happen if you moved from 25% to 35%, even just 40% active selling time? If you increase the active selling time from your reps by 50%, still less than 50% of their total time. Think about the impact that could have on their results. All right, so a couple quick things. Hopefully this works. There we go. Now that's not good. It's probably something I did. I'm sure it's something I did. There we go. All right. So in about 10 minutes, a copy of this presentation will be up on the hashtag stream, so feel free to take prodigious notes, but you can have a copy of this as well. The last book I wrote is called The Modern Marketing Field Guide. Next week at the Marketo Conference, we're launching my new book called Full Funnel Marketing. So happy to give you a copy of that. You don't have to pay for it. Send me an email if you want this, or send me a business card. Also, I'm featuring my new award-winning smoked bacon recipe today. How many of you like bacon? Yeah, I threw this in on a whim. I threw this in on a whim a couple months ago, and this by far was the most requested. And I'm very serious about this bacon. If I can get this to, if I push harder, what if I step on it? Do I have to point it somewhere? This is not, if I have to do this every time, it's going to be way less dramatic. I'm serious about the bacon. So you start with this, right? This is called pork belly. It's from the belly of the pig, right? You can buy this at Costco. This is not difficult. You square off the edges. You have a little piece of pork belly that looks about like this. Then you put a little cure on it. You do a little sugar, a little salt. Just mix it up and throw that on there like that. Put another cookie sheet on top of it. Then weigh it down. Put it in the fridge for about 7 days. Take it out. At that point, it's done. Or you can smoke it. Like put it in the grill, indirect heat, and you end up with something that looks like that. I know. That is so easy. The hardest part about making bacon is the waiting. I guarantee you can make it at home. So if you want that recipe, I'll give you that recipe as well. All right, there we go. This is from a study from a company called Demand Metric. And what they did is they looked at the likelihood of a sales organization making their revenue goals measured by how likely those, or how well those sales and marketing teams work together. I realize sales and marketing don't often work together very well. They don't even have the same goals, right? Sales is working against their revenue number. Marketing is working against some kind of retweet goal or something, right? But if you start to impact that number, if you start to get marketing to embrace revenue responsibility, or as what I've heard some VPs of sales say, you want marketing to feel the terror at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, let alone have the right metrics and have the same metrics you do, you can start to impact revenue directly. What I love about this stat is not only that it's a direct correlation, but also it's not black and white. It's not all or nothing. It's clear through this that if you start doing little things from your marketing organization, if marketing starts to provide better sales enablement, starts to do some of the 8 things we'll talk about here in a second, you can start to move from the right to the left and make an impact. Press harder. There we go. We've talked about this already. Buildings don't write checks, right? It's easy for salespeople to understand this. I think sometimes marketers get wrapped up in their definitions of an SQL and an MQL, and Matthew's right. Those are great from a definition standpoint. But marketers are some of the worst at not only owning the personas, but thinking that a building writes a check. Buildings don't write checks. People write checks. People that make emotional and irrational and illogical decisions. Quick story. I promise this will be quick. I was on a panel, and it was a women in sales panel, and I was the moderator in Seattle. And we had one guy in the back stand up and say, so here's what I understand. Consumers make decisions based on emotion, and business buyers make decisions based on logic. And also what I understand is that men sell on logic and women sell on emotion. So how do you recommend we teach women how to sell with logic? That's a question. No. So what's funny is, so I had a whole women of like sales leaders in the Seattle area on this panel, and you just slowly saw all the heads just slowly started to pivot his direction. And I was paying attention to the people answering, and one of those sales leaders very deftly, like just totally avoided the controversy, just said, it's both. It'd be, if only our B2B buyers bought based on logic, we'd probably sell a lot more stuff, right? So by the time she finished answering, looked back, he was gone. I think he kind of realized the mistake he had made. But it's people that make these decisions, right? And I think it's important to make sure that we understand that not as sellers, but also as marketers, that we're thinking about those different stages of the buying process that we'll go through here maybe. You don't have another one of these back there, do you? Just in case. This is a slide that I encourage you to take from the deck or take a picture of and give to your marketing team. I want every marketer at your organization to understand these 4 stages. The first is to do the math. Marketing plans don't start with a creative brief, they start with a spreadsheet. How many sales do we need to hit? How big a pipeline do we need to get there? How many leads do we need to get to that pipeline? That's it. You can make it more complicated. You can add things like sales cycle length and other components, but do that math. It's amazing to me how many marketers have no idea how many leads are required to hit a pipeline number, have no idea how big a pipeline they need. Can I just do them both? I want this one too, just in case. Is it okay? No? You want that one? All right, fine. All right. Didn't mean to beat you. Anyway, so, and there are some marketers that actually have an MQL goal. They have a lead goal that they're sticking with. It was not created with that same math. It was created completely arbitrarily based on what they did last year, based on whatever their budget is. Marketers tell me all the time, well, I don't have enough budget to create the kind of leads we need. That's bullshit. You have all the budget that you need. If the bank had a sale on dollar bills today and every dollar costs 90 cents for the rest of the day, what's your budget for that? Wrong question, right? Someone joked and said, oh, wouldn't it be great if marketing had a blank check? You do. Prove that this works. Prove that when you spend $1, you can make $3 and you can have all the money that you want. I don't know any CFO that wouldn't give their marketing team that kind of leeway. Unfortunately, most marketers don't think this way. They don't think about the math. They don't think in terms of revenue responsibility. They don't think of themselves and act like a cost center. Every B2B marketer I know has the ability to act like a profit center. Even if you can't measure anything, that's an excuse. That's a crutch. You don't need that. Make the right decision. All right, I'll get off my soapbox on that one. The customer profile is important. Not just understanding who the people are, but why they make decisions. I'll get into a little more of that in a second. The sales and the buying process have to map together. And this is a little bit on sales. Just because the sales process worked at your last organization doesn't mean it's going to work here. Every industry is different. Every size organization is different. You have to know how people buy. And for marketers and salespeople, the idea of firing lots of bullets is really important. Jim Collins wrote the book Good by Great. He also wrote a book called Great by Choice. And he talks about the difference between mediocre companies and those that are super successful. The successful companies fire lots of bullets. They take lots of chances. They test lots of things. They know that any things that they're not going to they test are not going to work. The path to innovation and success is always paved with failure. If you're a marketer and doing A/B testing, B is always wrong, so you're wrong at least half the time. The successful companies fire bullets because they're small, they're cheap, they're fast, and you move on. Once you find a bullet that hits the mark, you file a couple more to make sure that it hits, and then you put down the gun and you pick up a cannon. We all need cannons in our business. We need tools that make the biggest impact possible. But if you build the cannon first, which takes time, it takes money, it takes effort, what if that cannon doesn't fire? What if it doesn't fire right? And what do big, mediocre companies do when that cannon doesn't fire? They keep firing because they need the cannon to work. Fire lots of bullets. This is the one slide I'd probably stick on if I just had one for the day. I want to talk about sort of this alignment and this messaging before we get into some of these productivity best practices. It's the idea of selling the whole, not the drill. Thank you for downloading the white paper. Would you like to see a demo? No, right? It doesn't work that way. Our sales process is really about 2 stages. It's believe and then believe in me. If you take everything else off the table, you believe in an idea, you believe in an outcome, you believe in a vision of what you can become, then you believe in who can do that for you. This is a look at what Serious Decisions considers the buying journey. 6 stages they have. I would put a stage 0 on top of all of this, which would be attention. But my favorite stages from a sales development standpoint are actually these first 2. It's loosening the status quo and committing to change. Your prospects don't care about you until they care about an outcome for themselves. They don't care about hearing from you about what you do until they prioritize an outcome that they hadn't thought about before. What if I told you that this rule 1 for your sales teams was in the first call with a prospect, you weren't allowed to talk about your product or service at all. You had to talk about your prospect, their issues. You had to ask a question to say, what keeps you up at night? Don't ask that question. You'll get all kinds of crazy answers, some which you really don't want to hear about. But if you understand your audience well enough, you can say, I get to talk to people like you all day long. And when I ask the question of what keeps you up at night, I hear the same 3 things. You know what those 3 things are. You know eventually if someone aligns with one of those that you're going to have the product conversation you want. If none of those 3 are there, guess what? Unqualified prospect. This is a funnel, not a cylinder. Out, move on. But if they say which one of those 3 things just made you a little sweatier thinking about it, talk about that for a while. Qualifying around that. Why haven't you fixed that yet? What have you tried? What's the opportunity cost of not addressing that? What's the opportunity cost of overcoming that? That's the foundation of your sale. This can happen from marketing, this can happen from sales, but you have to start with that. You have to get someone committed to an outcome before you can talk through it. So at the top of the funnel, it's about listening, it's about having influence, and eventually, what's this one? Come on, it's got to be a Star Trek fan in here. Engage, right? So those of you that we talked to a couple folks at lunch about the Challenger sale, right? Teach, tailor, take control. The idea of helping people learn something first. Rule number 1 for sales in the first call is don't talk about your product or service. Rule number 2 is really more of a bar that I want people to reach. If your prospect hangs up the phone after that first call and looks at themselves and says, boy, that was interesting, I would have paid for that. Can your salespeople hit that bar? Do they do it today? What kind of insights can you teach? What's the cost of a problem that your prospect does or doesn't know that they have today that you could educate them on in a 20, 30-minute phone call? Totally possible. Totally possible. All right. So let's talk about these 8 ways that you can actually increase sales productivity. So we're going to get a little more tactical in the next few minutes. Active CRM ownership. I don't care who owns it. The job of the CRM administrator is not to make CRM more complex than ever before, which seems to be the mission of most CRM administrators. The best CRM strategies I see applied in the field are those that require sales reps to spend as little time in CRM as possible, right? There are some great tools in the market, some from people that are here that provide great overlays and great add-ons to CRM that allow your reps to spend more time selling and less time in CRM. How many of you know how much time it takes for your reps in CRM between sales calls? How many of you have ever tracked that or measured that? A couple people. If you haven't done it, I'd encourage you to do it. You don't have to do it across all your reps. Maybe what you do, and this is part of our role sometimes from a sales enablement standpoint, sometimes we'll just go and sit amidst the sales team. And for us, it's somewhat less about their productivity and more about, okay, how do we get more efficiency out of the leads we're generating? How good are those leads? I remember one client, we sat down with them, and they were using Salesforce, and they were also a RainKing client. And for those of you who don't know, RainKing is a database tool. Think of it like lists, right? So what they were doing is they had Salesforce and they had RainKing, and part of this is the sales team, right? People actively selling. They would go into RainKing, and they would cut and paste names out of RainKing, cut and paste them into a spreadsheet one by one, and then upload that spreadsheet into Salesforce. Right? These tools actually talk to each other. Right? These are buttons you can press and it's done. This was part of their process. I've also seen reps make a phone call and then spend 20, 25 minutes in CRM updating a million different fields that someone decided was important before they can get back on the phone. Some of those fields aren't important at all. Some of those fields could be updated automatically. Right? So think about what you're doing, what you're asking reps. If you don't have an understanding today of how much people are spending in CRM, if you don't know how much time people are spending between calls, I'd encourage you to figure that out, because otherwise that's what happens. Tools integration. If you buy more than one tool, part of your job is not just to teach people how to use it, but figure out how those tools integrate with each other. From a technology standpoint on the sales floor, and this happens to marketers as well, but on the sales floor, the impact is sometimes worse. We let the tail wag the dog. We get excited about certain technologies, and we buy them without having a strategy. We buy them without having a system for how to roll them out. And so we show it to our team in a 5 or 10 minute introduction in a sales meeting, and we hope they'll figure it out, and then we move on to the next tool. These tools can integrate with each other. Yes, it may take some IT time. Yes, it may take some time from your operations team. But if you're requiring your reps to go from tab to tab to tab all day long, to go from tool to tool, you're wasting their time. There are a few things in this list of 8 that are going to be earth-shattering, right? This isn't going to give you double your sales productivity in and of itself. But these little things add up, especially if you've got an inside sales team that's working with dozens of prospects a day. If they have to spend more time integrating their data, more time going back and forth between tools, more time in CRM, this ends up taking way too much of their time. Reporting and dashboards. How many of you have reps that actually have to spend manual time creating reports today? No one wants to raise their hand. We got a couple people, that's good. I don't have a stat for this, but I know for a fact that a very material percent of metrics that people track on the sales floor on marketing are never used. They're not even really looked at. I'll guarantee you that some of you in here right now have a sales dashboard or a dashboard you're looking at on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis where there are metrics on that report that you rarely look at, that you always skimp over. And if anybody in your organization is spending time creating and collating that data for you, it's a waste. One quick way to audit your reports, look at your reports today, and for any stat that doesn't have an immediate call to action, for any stat you look at where if something's wrong, if you don't like what you see, you don't have something you can do, I'd encourage you to reconsider whether or not you actually need to look at that stat moving forward. Make sure your reporting includes what you need to make decisions. Make sure you're automating as much of that as possible. If there's any part of your reporting that is manually created, I guarantee you it's taking way more time from your reps and way more time from your managers than you think. Talked about process improvement. How many of you have a sales playbook? Yeah. I love a good sales playbook. I'm not sure that I've ever seen like a real active playbook that is bound. I don't know, Trish, maybe you guys have these, right, where you sort of do the whole thing together. For me, a sales playbook is a bunch of the right processes that is a living document, right? But as you want to scale and create predictability and repeatability in your sales process, create a process so your reps don't have to make it up. Create a process so that you get consistent results on a regular basis. Right? Trish's team and a lot of others can do a really nice job of helping you implement this. But I can't tell you how many times we see reps that just stumble over themselves. They have their own process that is inconsistent with what other teams do, and they're not even consistent about following their own process. It doesn't have to take that much time. You don't have to formalize this in books of gold. But do something to make sure that if you want something repeatable and scalable, that you write that down and make sure the whole team knows how to do it. Sometimes you get those best practices that are just gamified on the sales floor. People figure out new ideas. They figure out new processes. Sometimes those are shared in sales meetings. But then after that sales meeting, anyone that was sick that day, anyone that started tomorrow, they no longer have access to that. Right? Make sure you're creating a system where you can document and collect these best practices. Right? Some people use this in SharePoint. Some people do this I've seen some people actually use Slack. How many of you use Slack in your organization or even in your sales team? I've seen some people use Slack as a way to just organize best practices. I mean, heck, you could have a Google Drive and just throw anything in there and just use the search field and find everything, right? So we no longer live in a world where you have to have everything perfectly organized on the C drive in particular folders. Whatever you do, create a process for this, but make sure that those best practices are collected. Maybe this is tied into process. I don't know. Maybe this could have been one slide. But you think about you go to a trade show. You send salespeople to a trade show. There's best practices of how you want them to operate at that trade show. right? One of my favorites is if you've got a booth, I want 2 lines of defense, or 2 lines of offense, I guess, I would say, at the booth. I want people working the periphery, right? People walking by the booth, no one's making eye contact, they don't want to talk to you. What's your gate stopper? You go to a trade show. What's that one statement, that one message? What's those couple words that can get someone to stop and go, right? Now you've got an opportunity to engage. Go back to the conversation you would have had in that 20, 30-minute meeting. Go back to that piece of insight that prospect would have paid for. Get them interested in that. If they're interested and want to learn more, you move them into the booth to the next line of offense. These are people that are ready to have that full conversation. Because if everyone just moves inside the booth, everyone now walking by is lost. Keep the periphery. Have people inside to have broader conversations. Lots of variations of how you can do that. It's a best practice, right? If you do that for a show you're doing next week because you thought it was great that I talked about that, fine. But the next team that goes to a next show, how are they going to know to do that if you liked it, if it worked? Make sure you collect these. This is a message that I usually give to marketers who don't talk to customers. It drives me nuts. Sometimes sales operations people do this as well, right? Sometimes the best sales ops people and the best sales enablement people are former salespeople that not only know the customer, but also understand the sales process, understand the sales team, understand what it's like to be a rep. I'm not going to belabor that just in the interest of time. And from a template and collateral standpoint, similar to best practices, make sure you have a system that makes this easy. The 2 things when we asked reps, we just recently did some research with a company in the sales tech space. We asked reps, what are the things you spend the most time on when you're not selling? 2 of the top 3 things were creating content and looking for content. I think we've all seen and heard of sales reps that instead of finding the right content, put 14 PDFs in an email, send it off to a prospect, and hope they read the right one. Right? Or spend 20 minutes looking for a piece of content only to stop and just create it themselves. How much time is wasted because we don't give our reps what they need? We don't give them easy access to what they need. Now, there's a bunch of problems inherent in this comment, right? I've seen stats that say up to 90% of content created for sales is not used. That's terrible. And there's a few different reasons for that. One is they don't know where it is. 2 is, another one is they don't like it. And they might not like it just because they don't understand how to use it. 3rd is it might just be crap. There's a lot of crap out there. If a marketing team isn't talking to customers, if a marketing team doesn't understand your sales process, they don't understand your personas, and they create a bunch of content that talks about the drill and not the hole, I don't blame you for not using it. But when you've got the stuff that works, how do you make sure your team knows where to find it? How do you make sure they know what content to use in the right part of the process with the right prospect? People Links is here. People Links does this. There's a lot of companies that do components of this. If you need a tool, who was it earlier today that made the comment? If you can increase your quota by 1 deal, it's something worth looking at. These are the kind of tools that I think could easily be justified that way. All right, any questions on those? All right, I'll talk about some traits of outstanding sales pros. And this is just from the work we've done from a sales enablement standpoint, working with good sales reps. Before I started Heinz Marketing, I worked at a couple startups, worked with a number of different inside sales teams of different sizes. And we've all seen the reps that are more productive, more focused than others, have attributes that we think might be valuable. I've heard some people complain about millennials in the workforce. Jim Keenan, who's not here, probably because he just gives too many F-bombs when he's on stage. Love the guy. But he gave a presentation once. He said, it's not the millennials that suck, it's your hiring process that sucks. There's some amazing millennials out there. It looks like some in this room. So we're always looking for the right people independent of various demographic information. So first is revenue responsibility. Yes, I talked about this from a marketing standpoint, but I think this is important for reps. How many of your reps have revenue responsibility and have responsibility over the right metrics in your organization versus simply making their commission check? How many of your reps understand what a good customer is? Now, you can engineer this by giving people more compensation, by giving them more, bigger commission if they bring in certain deals that you believe are going to have more lifetime value. But make sure they understand what the difference is between good sales and bad sales. We had a client once that they were a SaaS business, they were selling into the HR space, and they were selling a product that on average was about $4,000 a month. And their backup sale, when we got there, if people objected to price, they said, well, we'll give them like this $500 one-time product, and it's great, right? We got some money instead of nothing. It's like, no, that's not great. Like, you just wasted all of your time, and you failed to qualify the customer in the beginning, right? That's just a bad idea. That's an expensive customer, not because you got $500, because you probably just spent thousands of dollars to get $500. So I want the reps to have that business mindset. Yes, you can do this with with giving options. You can do this in a number of different ways. But find the reps that care about their commission check, but care about getting the right business in. What does focus mean? I spent all day just talking about productivity. How many of your reps have a daily plan when they get in the morning? How many of your reps stick with that daily plan? Have you ever heard of the concept of the Pomodoro technique? Anybody? Yeah. It's a basic technique. It was started in the 80s. I can't remember who came up with it. But Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. And he started with just this little tomato timer that you see in kitchens. You turn it, and it goes, it kind of ticks off, right? So the whole idea is that you spend 25 minutes at a time doing things. There's research that shows that most of us can only focus on a single thing for 15 to 55 minutes. So he picked somewhere in the middle. Said, whatever you're doing, turn off all your other alerts, turn off everything else you're doing, spend 25 minutes doing what's most important right now, which is that's actually probably the exact one I use right there. You got an app on your phone, you can just turn it on, and it'll tick off the time you have left in your 25 minutes. There's actually an app, for those that use Chrome, you can do this in Chrome as well. It's an app called Strict Workflow. What it does is you click go, and you can not only will it give you a timer for your 25 minutes, but you can tell it to restrict access to certain websites. When I do a Pomodoro, I call it Pomodoro, when I do a Pomodoro in my office, usually about 15 minutes in, I just naturally try to go somewhere else. I try to go to Twitter, go to Sprout Social, go somewhere else. Like Strict Workflow it won't let me do that at all. So there's our plan, and then there's how we execute it, which is usually by responding to other stuff. Emails come in, fire drills come in. Having a daily plan is one thing, executing is another. We have some sales teams that 3 times a week, they will send their managers, the reps will send their managers what they call the 455 email. It's called 455 for a reason. It's at the end of the day. If you take longer than 5 minutes to write it, you are doing it wrong. And the whole idea is you answer 4 questions. What did I do well today? What do I need to do better? What's something I learned that I didn't know before? And what's something that I'm worried about? Everybody answers those questions. If you take longer than 5 minutes, you're not doing it right. It's a great tool for managers to quickly understand what's going on the sales floor. Not tomorrow morning when you've had a chance to sleep on it, but right now when it's still raw, it's still emotional. That's when we want to capture that. But I also want reps that are making their plan for the next day. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, right? If you're going to make a bunch of follow-up calls tomorrow, print out that list, put it on your desk, turn everything off. When you get it in the morning, make those calls right away. Don't turn on your computer, don't turn on email, don't turn on CRM. Because you know that of those 20 calls, how many voicemails are you going to leave? 17, 18, right? Just power through them. I don't know if we get into this, the idea of task batching, but especially for inside sales teams, if you make a phone call, send a follow-up email, leave an update in CRM, figure out who you're going to call next, and then go around and do that again, as opposed to task batching, make 20 calls, send 20 follow-up emails, update CRM all at once. It's a 40% productivity improvement by batching. I didn't drink before this, promise. Batching versus doing things in serial. That regular recalibration is super important. We all go into work on certain days, and we have a set of priorities, and we don't follow them. We fall off. We get certain things distract us, right? We all have great New Year's resolutions, and then we fall off the wagon. Tomorrow's a new day. It's a new week. It's a new month. Just start over again. You lost a day. So what? Your ability to manage the distractions is really critical. Those alerts that pop up for us for everything now, turn them all off, right? Use the Pomodoro tools or use something else, but make sure you stay focused. This is a lot easier said than done, right? But it's a critical part. This discipline of being focused is a critical part of being successful. Customer-centric, the idea of putting your customer first. Go through your email templates that you've written for your sales reps and see how many sentences begin with I or we. Bitch, it's a lot. We all naturally write this way. We write about ourselves when we're writing to someone else. Come up with better you-centric statements. If you're writing about your product, if you're writing about your service, what's the why behind it? What's the reason why someone cares about that? And marketers do this all the time, challenging each other in terms of a copy. Because we all, even marketers that want to be customer-centric, sometimes you get lazy and you start writing about the product, you start writing about things that don't really matter. If I can ask why and there's an answer to that question that isn't motherhood and apple pie or just because, that's probably a better way of writing something. It's probably a better way of saying something. This is a place where I think practice matters a lot for reps. I mentioned earlier we create sales processes, we create new templates. Marketers throw new messages in front of the sales team. And then we put them right back on the phones, right? We expect our prospects or expect our sales team just to naturally understand how to do these things, as opposed to not just teaching them, but also allowing them to practice. One of the biggest reasons people have call reluctance is because they don't feel confident in what they're about to say. They don't feel confident either in the message or their ability to deliver that message. Right? I mean, ultimate confidence isn't going to come by anything other than just getting up here and doing it. I don't care how many times you practice a presentation. Doing it with your boxers in your hotel room is very different than standing up here and doing it for real. Right? But your ability to get comfortable with that message allows you to be better in practice. Can you imagine what would happen if an actor had to get up on stage and was so worried about giving their lines right, so worried about remembering their lines that they weren't actually acting? We have to do the same thing for our sales reps in terms of being customer-centric and being prepared. The better your reps understand their message, the better confident they are, the better they're going to be at reacting and having a real conversation. You can't script a sales call. You guys know this. Right? You can script a voicemail. You can script the first 15 seconds or so, but then your prospects start with their own whatevers. Now you're in improv territory. The better you understand your message, the better more comfortable you are with how you're going to deliver that, the better you're going to be able to, and more confidence you're going to have in implementing that improv and moving forward. Personal accountability. Remember a sales team, well, this may resonate with some of you. We worked with an inside sales team, and part of what we were doing was we were actually working on some incentive programs. It was around the holidays, and so we were doing, it was an inside sales team, fairly young group. And so we're saying, okay, we're going to do points for hitting your dial volume. We're going to do points for the meetings you set up. And so we had this whole sort of point system that gave people drawings for cash and stuff for the holidays. And we had the sales VP said, you don't understand. We need to do points for showing up on time. We need to do points for showing up sober. Like, oh, yeah. There's some really nervous laughter, people showing scars from this. So what does accountability mean? Accountability means showing up on time, showing up sober, transparency in what's working, what's not. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen was last year at the AAISP Leadership Summit. One of the sponsors got up and they took their presentation time. What they did is they actually played recorded calls of their reps having prospect conversations. The reps were in the room. It was painful. We all have those conversations. I don't care how long we've done it. Actually, Trish Bertuzzi was on the panel of reviewers. And at one point, because we're all kind of like laughing nervously, she says, every one of you in the room has this problem. And every one of you have done this. You get into that improv situation, you will do things you wish you hadn't done when you listen to that recording. Being open to that criticism is really important. You want reps that are going to do that. You want reps that are able to make those regular adjustments. That daily discipline is an important part of this as well. Being able to get back on your horse tomorrow if you have a bad day today. I don't know how sales reps today can work without some degree of technology. So being confident with your technology is important, but it's on us as managers, it's on us as leaders. I believe it's on marketing as well to make sure that reps know how to use that technology, that have it integrated, that make it so that people are spending as little time with that technology as possible and more times with their prospects. So when you think about the technology you're using, a couple things to keep in mind. What problem does it actually solve? This is another place where I think we let the tail wag the dog, right? We find technology that we think looks cool, but does it really solve one of our most important problems? What are the biggest bottlenecks in your sales process? What are the biggest inhibitors to making your reps more successful, more productive? What are the things that are keeping them converting more? Those are the tools you should prioritize. Not because they're fast and easy, not because they don't require IT, not because you can buy them with your credit card. The most important technology investment you may have may be really gnarly. It may be really expensive. It may require a significant amount of integration. What problem are you solving, and is it worth it? I think reps today need to have an agile mentality more than ever before. We're constantly changing what we're asking them to do. We're changing our technology. We're changing the process. We're changing their comp plans. So having that agile mentality means a couple things. How are you able to maintain speed and focus amidst that chaos? How are you making it okay for your reps to experience, what's the word I'm looking for? Totally lost it. Sometimes when most of us don't like change, some of us don't like change to different degrees, but some of us actually mourn change, right? I think way too often, like we make a change to a comp plan, we make a change to territories, we make a change to something that goes against what reps are used to doing. And we expect them to immediately get on the horse. We don't give them an opportunity to mourn. We don't give them an opportunity to complain. Just because a rep is complaining doesn't mean they're about to quit. Doesn't mean they're going to stop working for you. Give them time to transition, but get them back focused where they need to be. And some of this, from an agility standpoint, is also that power of humility. It's being okay with the fact that we're not always going to be successful. We're not always going to do what we want to do. As managers, it's being okay with the fact that sometimes we're going to choose a course of direction that isn't always going to be where we want it to go. Based on the theme of humility for this the theme of productivity from this presentation, it is a significant inhibitor to productivity when we aren't transparent, when we aren't open to this chaos, when we aren't open to reps expressing their fears and concerns and the mourning around some of those changes. When they see that we're humble about ourselves, when they see that we're transparent about what worked and what didn't work, the level of loyalty and trust increases. The level to which those reps want to work for you and want to work harder for you and harder for the company increases as well. And the last on my list of attributes is empathy. I mentioned earlier the sales team who's feeling the tear at the end of the month and the end of the quarter, grinding it out, and marketing team is not sitting there grinding it out. The marketing team's over having happy hour because they met their retweet goal. That does not create the highest level of empathy between both teams. I've seen some marketers say, is it really that big a deal if the last Saturday of the month we come in and make breakfast with the sales team? Yeah. You're not closing the deal. I don't know a lot of sales teams that are expecting marketing to get on the phone and help close the deal, right? But be there. Show a level of empathy. Know how hard it is, right? I would encourage you to encourage your marketers, spend some time, go on some sales calls, sit amongst the sales team, sit on the sales floor, see how hard this is. I would go even further. Take your marketers, and any new marketer you hire, I don't care who they are, the CMO, intern, whoever it is, as part of their onboarding, they make phone calls. They're a BDR, right? It's not just to sort of feel the pain, it's to understand a critical part of how we make money, right? When you generate an MQL, a new qualified lead, when you generate a retweet, when you get traffic from Google, one of our directors says, if you can't buy a beer with it, it's not the right metric. I think the better your marketers understand what it's like to do that, the better off they're going to be. When your sales team knows that you've been through that, when your sales team knows that you understand what it's like, not that you do it, but you understand, you're empathetic. This goes for other departments as well. Sometimes we talk a lot about sort of sales and marketing not getting along with each other. We don't really talk a lot about sales and ops, or sales and customer support, right? There's an empathy that needs to exist there as well. And I'd say from everything we're talking about here, an empathy for your customers. Be an active listener. Don't be so focused on your process, don't be so focused on your script and your messaging that you're not listening to what your customers are saying. If you ask your customers, if you say, listen, I get to talk to people like you on a regular basis and I hear the same 3 things over and over again, which of these 3 things just made you sweaty? If one of those really hits the mark with them, you just became a counselor. They're going to tell you all about it because they think for the fact that you were able to bring it up or the fact that you could enumerate that point, you might have an answer for them. But in some cases, they just need a shoulder to cry on, right? Part of building rapport and trust is allowing yourself to be empathetic. It's not just getting off of that phone call so you can make the next one and get your numbers up. We're building a foundation for sales here. All right. So if you want to copy this stick, I've got it. I've got these offers. I don't know why that doesn't say bacon there, but there's the bacon. Oh, there it is. If you'd like to get some of that yummy bacon, just send me a business card or whatever. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks for having me.